Okay, here. Just to recap, this is where you should be when you get to this. All right, this is going to be the sphere. Okay, so the first thing, what is this called right here?
Shading.
No, that is not called shading. What is this called?
Contrast.
It's a gradation, right? This is a step scale, though. Shh. Hey, you might want to pay attention because if I quiz you or test you over this as like a term, like a midterm or maybe a final, you might want to learn this, all right? Step scales, they're in steps, and it's a gradation. So that's your first one you're going to do. That's on the board, right? Number one. Number two, once you've done that, what technique are you doing that with? Tonal, right? You're not do blending. If you do blending, you'll do it over again, and you have to go back over it and fix it. Okay, it's clean, it's nice, it's measured, so it's measuring as well. Okay, it's 1 by 6 inches if you want to be exact. Then you'll do all 6 of them. Okay, all 6 of them are going to be labeled. All right, and that's your next one. Okay, again, I'm going to check these things. Now, these are transitions. That means they gradually get dark to light or light to dark. Okay, they're not in steps. Okay, that's the difference between the two ones I just showed you. All right, when you're done with that, here's what's going to happen. You're going to have to get all these values using a technique into the circle. Okay, and the way you do that is you come up with, number one, you come up with a light source. Okay, I don't care which way you want to go with it. I'm just going to go to my left, and I got the light source coming up on top. So that's what I want you to do. Create a light source. You can even put a little sun there. Okay. You can even put a smiley face. Everybody's doing this, all right? I'm not just doing this myself, all right? So there's 5 components when it comes to light logic, they call this, all right? This is in drawing books. It's not something I'm making up, all right? First thing is going to be known as your light source, which is going to call your highlight. Okay, highlight is your brightest part of your paper. So in this sense, if we're using a white paper, your white is going to be as your highlight. That's going to be the brightest part. All right, when it comes to shading, it's good to have all range of values. That means you're going to have your highlight. That means you're not going to be able to shade everything. Does that make sense? In fact, it makes it easier because you don't have to shade everything. A lot of times what happens when you're first starting off, you shade everything. So everything's gray or dark. Okay? When you look at good drawings, they actually pop and come alive. Like, say, for example, this one right here. Okay? It has highlights in there because it's used the paper as well. And it has a good contrast. All right? And it's done well. So your highlights in this area. Okay? As you're moving down, all right, you're going to have your mid values, which is going to be in the middle area. Okay, those are your mid values. For the term, though, that they use in the books, it's called crest shadow. Okay, but these are your mid values. If I look at this step scale, I got all these little values right in here before it gets dark and light. Okay, those are your mid values. These guys right in here. All right. Then as you move further down, it gets dark. This is going to be your core darkness. Okay. And then as it gets down on this little bottom part, you're going to have this little sliver, I like to call it. Okay, and it's actually known as your reflective light. And that kind of gives you that 3D look, and I'll explain that when we get into it, all right? So you got this little sliver at the bottom. Okay, it doesn't go all the way, it just kind of goes, and basically what it's going to do, it's going to actually go with your cast shadow. So when you have opposite side, you're going to have something that casts a shadow, and that's going to be your cast shadow. So there's 5 things when I'm talking about light logic. Okay. Now, how do you start this thing? Okay. This is how I would start it. It doesn't mean that you have to start it the same way. If you find a better way and it works good for you, You still get the same results? Great, do it. Okay? Everyone's going to have their own kind of style. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes you might just use what I'm doing. Okay? I like to start on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start above that reflective light that I did with that little sliver. And I'm just going to put down tone. Okay? I'm doing little wiggles or little circles. Okay? Now, this shape is what? What kind of shape is this? So I like to go with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of rotate my paper so I don't have to tweak my wrist when it comes to shading. So if you do it well, you're gonna be slow with your shading, and you're not going to be racing through everything. Okay?
You're going way up there.
What's that?
You're going like way up.
I know. So I'm just going to work my way up to the highlight, and I'm not going to shade in the highlight. I'm going to stop before that, but I'm just going to give it one value right now, okay? I'm not going to overlap yet until I get to the top. As I get closer to my highlight, my pressure comes light. Okay? And if I get too dark, what can I use to lighten it up? Exactly. Use your kneadable eraser to help you. So I should get something that looks like that when I get to the first step, okay? All right, and then what I do is I go back over, I start down the bottom, I put a little bit more pressure, and I'm going to start to create that value a little darker. And again, that's going to be your core darkness, which is going to be pretty dark. Okay, how do you compare to it? You simply take up your step scale, and if you did it right, you'll see that really dark value. That's what you're going to try to get to, is that dark value down low. And then as you get closer up top, you're just going to have all your mid values. We're gradually going to get lighter, and you'll have a clean transition. And that's how you're going to create that 3D effect. Now, some people like to put a really big highlight, which means it's a really bright light source. Some people don't, and it depends on what you want to do. The key, though, is not to put like a halo, where you have this huge line right there before it goes from light to dark, okay? So in this range, you want to have a nice transition. And again, use your kneadable eraser, stamp it out a little bit, and you should get a nice effect that gives you that gradual dark to light, okay? All right, so that's the main part. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my shadow, okay, my cast shadow, and I'm gonna kind of outline that outside edge. Now, what you'll do is you'll create, if you didn't cover it up, you'll create that reflective light, that little sliver in there. Because I'm not gonna touch that yet. See that little sliver right in there? Okay, that's that reflective light. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tone it down a little bit so that way it doesn't compete with the highlight. Because your highlight should be the brightest part. Bless you. Now, some people like to do a solid color in the shadow. Some people like to gradually get dark to light, which is fine. So I might go ahead and just kind of fade it a little bit. And there's my shadow, okay? So, what I mean by reflected light being so bright, if it competes with my highlight, that means I'm going to have to just lightly give it some value. Because that should just be a little bit of a value so that way I can kind of see it, and then it gives that 3D look to it, okay? And that's what that reflective light does, all right? Do you always have to put a reflective light? Not necessarily, but a lot of times with the shadows, you'll see that, okay? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to show me this one with all the components to it, right? And then you're going to do a normal one. So you're going to do one without one. So this would be like one without one, okay? All right, once you've done that, then this is where you're going to have to get creative. That means that you're going to have something that's kind of somewhat circular, all right? Some people do something like a beach ball, okay? You might, find it fun and do a character. Who is this guy or a person? You guys recognize this one?
No.
Huh? It's Pikachu, right? See, I don't even know that one. Okay, if you like to play pool and you want to get really creative, go for it. Okay? So that's going to be step number 4, okay? 4 is basically you're going to use the problem solve with using something to 3D, okay? All right, and I might pick out some top ones and get you some prizes like another pencil or a kneadable eraser or something fun with art, okay? So do a good job on that. Then number 5 is your last thing you're going to do before you go on to the main one, all right? And what you're going to do is you're going to take your newsprint, okay, that you have done, and you're going to take a small area of that newsprint and you're going to transfer it on the light table, okay, just simply by copying it. And then you're going to do what's called a text study. That means you're going to do a part of your hand and create value to it. So it's kind of like a trial error. All right, this is where you get the problem solve again as far as with making sure you don't screw it up on the main one. Okay, so there's some steps involved. And that's number 5. If you look at number 5, they're really big. Do I want you to go that big? Not necessarily. The ones that did that, they wanted to. But this is the size that I want you to try to go at least for. Okay, does that make sense? So you don't have to go huge, but I want you to try it out. This is where you show me what technique you want to use. So a lot of people like to do blending. I get very few people that hardly do any stippling, but sometimes I'll get stippling. They try it, and then they find out, maybe not. Okay, cross-hatching. All right, I've seen that before, which is really cool. Some of the techniques I've seen on that. But the main ones are usually tonal or blending. Okay, those are the main techniques that you use. All right. So 5 steps before you get on the main one, and I do that for a reason, not to torture you guys, but to hopefully be successful at the end, where you actually put a lot of time into it and you actually get something that's really nice, clean. You can tell you've been working on your techniques, not just like a 1 minute. Here I go shot, okay? Questions? We good? So, you know where you're at as far as with your assignment. I don't at the moment. If you need something, great. If you don't, okay, go ahead and get to work. Just